experience than a fucking Odin mount.
Play dead.
Yeah.
Play dead. All right, so this next interview we have actually came courtesy of Mr. Happy. He got to sit down with both Yoshi P and Soken for an audio interview. We, of course, have the text version here. So I picked out a few of the questions that he asked for us to talk about. His first question to Yoshi, the Weapons Refrain Ultimate was defeated in just over 5 days. Was this a surprise, or did the team expect the encounter to be defeated in about that time? Yoshi goes on to say that it's always tough to calculate kill times as player skill is constantly improving. Not only that, but you don't know how your players will respond to the new mechanics being thrown at them. For the development team, we just want to ensure that the battle doesn't drag on longer than 2 weeks, because once it gets past that point, morale and excitement decreases drastically.
That's probably fair.
Happy had pointed out, was it the first or the second Alexander? Yeah. So
I think it was the first Alexander.
First one,
when
yeah,
that
it was
happened.
the first one. It was Gordius, and that like everyone was just fucking up on the third one and the fourth. Like it took forever for people to clear that.
Yeah, so I mean, I thought it was pretty cool for them to actually put like a sort of a number on what they sort of look at as like the sort of sweet spot, and 2 weeks probably seems about right to me, because even though the
for one fight,
exactly, yes. I mean, and to be fair, the first clear was after 5 days, but those are like your 1%ing world firsters. There are still people who are trying to work their way through it.
There are still people that are like really close, like 2 minutes off, but still haven't done it yet.
Yeah. This next question was for Soken. Speaking of the Weapons Refrain, the Primal's themes there are the renditions created by your band. How does it feel having that work used in the game itself?
And he said it sucks. That's weird. That's an odd response.
With the Ultimate series, the sound team wanted to really bring some new sound and atmosphere to these encounters. At some point, the idea of using our renditions of the songs came up, and when the sound team tried it, they were very happy to see how well it worked out. They hoped that the players enjoyed this as well. And he then said an extra note, during the Primal's band version of Garuda, the original was Koji doing that sort of like rap where he's almost mocking the players.
Yeah.
They did decide to take that out because we knew every time the players wiped, they'd be returned to the start. And they said it almost felt bad having Koji literally laughing in your face right after you wipe every single time. They thought it might be too distracting.
Oh, stop that.
I think that would have been hilarious.
I think it would have been awesome.
Great.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
And it would have become a meme so quickly too, and then Koji would have been asked to do that everywhere.
Yep. Next question for Yoshida was about the new Deep Dungeon. Heaven on High is releasing in the coming weeks with patch 4.35. Will the first 100 floors be the only floors, or are there plans to expand upon this in the future updates? With the release of Heaven on High, all of the floors will be available immediately. No new floors will be added later. They say that with the original Deep Dungeon Palace of the Dead, we released 200 floors over 2 patches. However, our feedback indicates that outside of leveling other jobs, players only really enjoyed the challenge of floors 180 to 200. So with Heaven on High, the leveling and story portion will end at floor 30, and 31 to 100 should feel closer to that 180 to 200 experience.
Okay.
Expect that kind of challenge from 31 to 100, and we hope the players enjoy accessing this content a little sooner.
Happy knows the questions to ask, man.
Yeah, see, that's
good
fair. Had you just came out and we just found out, like, all right, there's just these 100 floors and that's it, I think that would have been received very negatively. But to see that they took actual player feedback about what we liked and what people maybe didn't like about Deep Dungeon, and they found a way to refine that and sort of draw more enjoyment out of it, obviously it's going to remain to be seen once we actually get our hands onto it. But those are the types of answers that I enjoy getting.
Well, right, and that works both, because Happy has the proper context for everything in the game, and so when they get the responses, sometimes I feel like there are other outlets that just like bottom line it and don't really go and take the time to explain, like
what the question is asking.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like Happy is, both understands what he's asking and understands the responses and understands the most important things to convey from those responses.
If this was a double tap article, they would have been like, Yoshida said that there will not be a second installment and you're only getting 100 floors.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, phraseology is really important when it comes to stuff like this, and that's true.
I don't think that's a realology.
I think it is.
It's definitely a realology. The next question was for Soken. After years of making music for FF14, how do you go about finding new inspiration for each new track you created? And remember, Yoshi P has the world record for most songs created for a game. He says it's difficult to describe.
That would be Soken.
Yeah, Soken has
not
that.
Yoshi P.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Soken. Definitely like Soken more than Yoshi P. He said
Soken just listens to Power Man 5000.
it's difficult to describe. With FF14, we do a lot of events, and when we do these events, I get to see a lot of people. And every time I see these passionate players who encourage us, it serves as motivation for me to keep giving them new music. Other than that, video games are a big inspirational factor for me. I love video games. Yoshi then said, from my perspective, our dev team is pretty competitive internally. When one develops something, another wants to develop something better. When Soken then has to compose a new song for this variety of content, I feel like it gets a lot of inspiration from it. And Soken also said the plot of FF14 also helps a lot. Putting music to scenes or events can really help inspire. It's probably
so the plot is all developed first, and then his music comes.
Oh yeah. This next one is a Eureka question for Yoshi. Eureka will be seeing the Pagos edition in 4.36. How does the team plan on making the weapon building experience different from the previous iteration, as well as going forward after Pagos? And this is
that's a good question.
And this is a good answer too. I'm really glad to be reading this. He says our general rule for improving weapons in a series such as this is that we need to make it vary. It's still the same idea of improving a weapon, but it can't be the same thing every time. So with this, expect improving your weapon in Pagos to be different from improving it in Animos and in future Eureka zones as well. I don't want to spoil what you'll be doing, as I want the players to experience it firsthand, but one thing I will say is that the conditions for spawning NMs will be very different in some cases than it was in Animos. I'm looking forward to players having to figure them out.
Dude, that's hopeful, but
instead of wind weather, it's ice weather.
Yeah, he says the conditions for spawning NMs will be different, but it doesn't really necessarily say that you can't still just figure out the conditions and then fate train.
No, you're right.
Fate training is part of the system.
It will still definitely have to wait till we can get our hands on it and figure out exactly what it is.
Right.
But it's still answers like this are still they give me a little bit more hope than when we get answers up. Oh, we can't really tell you that so far. You'll have to log on to find out.
Thank you, Uncle Happy.
God, but because right now all of the Eureka NMs minus 2 or kill X amount of mobs, mob spawns, and then even the 2 that aren't are kill X amount of mobs in weather and mob spawns. So I don't know. I still feel the condition's going to be different, as then you have to run in circles and drop shit like you do to spawn S ranks. But again, if you figure it out, you can still just fate train the hell out of it.
And that's fine, Nikki. You can be cynical. It's actually a nice change of pace having you be on board with us in the drab, dreary darkness.
At the same time, though, a lot of those
is so boring.
But a lot of those S rank NMs that the spawn conditions that they had put in were really interesting, and there was nothing in the spawn conditions in the first Eureka that no one could figure out, right? There wasn't, you know what I mean?
And it was the introduction to Eureka, so I wouldn't have expected them to be too complicated.
And I think a lot of the feedback, not just from us, but that I saw across the community when we got Eureka was, yes, this is more of this. This is that, that was short,
it's the right
but
path.
Cool.
It's the right path.
Yeah, exactly. And so if Square Enix is paying attention, and I do believe that they are, then I think that what they should be getting out of that is, okay, we can apply some of the more complicated spawning concepts that we used in hunts and apply them over here in Pagos. At least that's what I'm hoping, and this response to this question allows me to keep that hope.
The next question was for Soken. Are there any tracks in the game you'd really like to do a Primals rendition of that you haven't been able to yet? And he says, ooh, that's tough. I suppose if I had to pick one, it would be a very recent one. The theme used for Tsukuyomi. What about you? Which theme would you like me to remix? And Happy said Byaku, to which Soken said, yes, Byaku. Thank you. I appreciate all that feedback. Perhaps we'll be able to do it, blah, 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 blah.
All right.
This next question was actually really, really funny. For Soken, some months ago, I had the chance to speak to Koji Fox. I asked him about his experience performing the Rise rap and how it came to be. I just wanted to hear your side of it. How did you come to choose and convince Koji Fox to do it? He said, Koji really did not want to do it. I approached him with the idea, and he simply looked at me and said, I am a middle-aged white man living in Japan, and you want me to rap? I, of course, told him yes.
Yeah,
it wasn't a joke. I simply knew Koji was the best candidate to do it. Early in my career, I worked on a title called Mario Hoops 3-on-3. Square Enix developed it while Nintendo published it, and for one of the tracks, Koji Fox did the rap. So
shit. I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
So I knew when I needed him to do it for Rise that he was the right choice.
Oh, that is so funny.
That being said, when he recorded Rise in the studio, it really didn't sound good. Let me just say that for that one, I really had to science the shit out of it.
I kind of know what he's talking about too. Yeah.
However, the live performance he did incredible. He must have practiced really, really hard for it. And then Happy said he told me he was walking through a park practicing this on a daily commute, and he would hear locals calling him a crazy gaijin.
That's hilarious.
That is really funny.
That is so funny.
The next question was
because I mean the thing, you know, when I think, listen, I need to do some serious rap rhymes, the first person that comes to mind is obviously Koji Fox. Right? Like, you look at him the first time you see him and you go, man, I bet you got some dope rhymes in you, bro.
He could burn it up. Yeah.
That's right.
The next
victory for America.
Next question was
I wonder if he can freestyle.
Probably not.
You know what? We ever get a fucking interview, I'm asking him to freestyle.
You put him on the spot?
That's right.
All right, Coach,
we're going to become fucking Sway in the morning in this bitch, and you're going to have to freestyle.
Wow.
All right, let's find him at FanFest. Corner him. Let's do it.
Oh boy, I'm sorry, Koji. I'm sorry.
You know what? I think we should book him as a performance for the after party.
How much it would cost? I bet Koji would cost quite a pretty penny.
Probably.
No, he'd do it for the love of the game and the community.
Wait, hold on. Are we booking him as Limit Break Radio, or would we have to like go undercover and like, yeah, this is State of the Realm, and we want to book you for this after party we got, Koji?
State of the Realm wouldn't host an after party.
That's fair. That's fair.
Checkpoint Radio might though.
They might know what Checkpoint is if they stay up on their enemies. You have to know your enemies. They know about us. Yeah. So the next question for Yoshi said, when the next expansion releases, will the current ultimate encounters still be eye level synced? If so, do you think job changes could make these encounters more difficult than intended to revisit? Unfortunately, we haven't given this much thought. Our goal right now is to produce encounters that players will love and find challenging, but it's hard to predict down the line how they will be received. I'd imagine we'd have discussions considering a few things. Do we want to keep these level synced when expansions launch? Will we go back and retune the fights to keep them at the ultimate level if we do keep them synced? Perhaps we need to remove the fights for a time and then re-release them balanced for their intended level. Like I said, we haven't really had any discussion considering this, but when the time comes, we will figure out exactly what we'd like to do.
But dude, this is what we have been saying for so long with the constant churn of content where things just go by the wayside after one or two patches. Like, of course they're in this position, and they put themselves in this position.
They did. Now, I think that they probably look at the ultimate fights a little bit different than they do just every raid that comes out, because these are supposed to be the ultimate challenge.
Yeah, you're supposed to also like be able to go back and do Bahamut now like it was still, hard.
But the thing is like it doesn't work. Like,
no, probably not.
Like that. How often does that work? And the thing is that like if they're serious about this, that means that every single at least expansion. I'm going to say at least expansion.
At least,
if not,
but then
if not every single major patch where we get an eye level scale. That they're going to have to go back and readjust the difficulty of that fight. That's dev time. That's,
resources, their favorite word.
Exactly. Like, I think that's hardly the best use of their time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
What's the problem with just slapping an item level on it and calling it good?
Just keeping it item
just
synced forever, no echo?
Yeah, like whatever this item level is right now, like the maximum, just leave it at that, and then when your item level goes past it, the challenge is still there.
Right. No,
Except the thing is that with expansions, with them like removing different abilities and adding different abilities, it's going to change. Even like
which
if they
fine.
add ones that but they could add and remove ones at lower levels as well, which they have done. It's going to change the tuning of the battle.
Yeah,
I think at that point, after an expansion is done, I think that's completely fine.
I think that's a waste of fucking time.
to keep changing stuff?
Yes, to
so
go back and redevelop it.
That's why I'm saying just keep it at item level synced, it can't go past it. And then
no. What Nika's talking about is, you know, with the way that the battle system changed between Heavensward and Stormblood, that a lot of those fights wouldn't be balanced the same way because
like
we have access to different abilities.
If one of the fights came out in Heavensward, and then the battle system changed, and then we still just level synced back to 270 or whatever,
and how often,
it wouldn't be the same battle, and it wouldn't be tuned properly.
And how often do you now go back and do level cap stuff at either 50 or 60, and you're like, the battle system kind of works, but it sort of also doesn't at the same time? You know, that happens every time they make a big battle system adjustment, and as long as they don't adjust it too much, they're able to keep everything in status quo. What they're talking about now is going back and redeveloping this shit every single time there's an expansion, and I think that that's a waste of resources.
That's crazy. Don't bother.
Yeah, let's go back to our phone lines and talk to Crimson Tinted from Famfrit. What's going on, Crimson?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Thanks for calling Limit Break Radio. What's up?
So I've been, ever since I've read the story about, you know, Elysium and the RMT sales of runs, I've been thinking specifically about what the response of people that either heavily promote or stream and support Elysium should do in response to those accusations, right? And to be honest, I'm very specifically thinking about Mr.Happy, who has made a lot of high-end content with Elysium raid groups for years now, right? And I feel like there should be a response from people like that who have been affiliated with Elysium for a long time on the situation, one way or the other. But I don't feel like I've really heard a peep out of them, and that honestly bothers me from an ethical standpoint, because if you keep making content, as it were, off their backs, right, and they end up being cheaters and disgraced, then, you know, how many degrees removed are you from that disgrace, right? I wonder.
I think that that's a very, very much a fair criticism, and you know, I don't know who Mr. Happy raids with. I don't know who, you know, is helping him, you know, produce his content or whatever. I am completely in the dark. I don't consume his content, so I don't really know. The thing is that if I'm Happy, I know that people know who I'm raiding with. And I think that you're right. I think it's reasonable for you as a fan to be like, what do you have to say about it? I think that that's a totally reasonable expectation, if for no other reason than to just kind of be curious what he has to say about it.
Even if he's not associated with them, I feel like none of the big guys have really had any words to say about this.
Nobody has, but besides...
there's been a deafening silence. I've heard way more about the Moogle post than I have about this shit, and I think that this is actively damaging to our community and to our game.
Well, but here's the thing. If you're part of...
The Moogle post guy's just a one fucking creeper who's, he should be called out on his creepiness, but this is a way more deep-seated, deep-rooted problem in our community, and you're right. It's just not getting talked about.
Well, but why should anybody come out and talk about it? Look, if you're part of the 1%, if you're part of Elysium, even if you're Square Enix, none of them are saying anything about it, so why volunteer yourself to step forward and give your own opinions on it? All it's going to do
is just going to hurt you.
It's just going to hurt you, absolutely. It's just this weird festering wound now at this point.
Yeah, and the thing is that the more that people don't talk about it, the bigger the problem's going to be. The more obvious the double standard is going to be. And, to me, I think that that's worth talking about. You know, like as someone who makes content for this community, I think that's worth shining a spotlight on and at least going like, are you okay with this? Because if you are, fine, whatever. Then... we might be playing two different games, you and I.
Yeah, see,
you know,
and
if you don't see how this is an active detriment to our community and to our game, then maybe I do live in a world unto myself, and I am looking at things with rose-tinted glasses and all of that shit. I'm willing to admit that, but I think that we've laid out a pretty specific case as to exactly why and how this damages not just your middle player base, but your overall player community. And you know, if Happy doesn't want to talk about it, or State of the Realm doesn't want to address it, or I don't know who else, you know, like if nobody else wants to talk about it, we will. I don't really give a shit. Well, is Elysium gonna come after me, guys? Oh no. Oh, are they gonna dox me? You can have my address. I'll give it to you. I don't even really give a shit. You know, like there's. What the fuck are they going to do? I think that they need to be called on their bullshit, and there's no one to do that but Square Enix. Limit Break Radio can't do anything about it. It's got to be Square Enix. It can only come from Square Enix. That's what bothers me. The silence from any number of content creators, any number of streamers in the FF14 community doesn't bother me as much as the limp-wristed, weak attempt that Square Enix put out there to do a bit of damage control once they saw people were talking about this on Reddit.
Which, by the way, that Reddit did not silence.
Right. I respect Carlos' point, too, about, you know, speaking out if you're any kind of prominent figure in the 14 community represents brand risk. Yes, of course it does.
Well,
my only counterpoint is how do you not, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, for example, right now, if Elysium is who Happy raids with to get his videos, I would not want to be in his position, because if you step out to talk about that, you can't just talk about it and then jump right back in with Elysium. Like, following that talk, you'd also have to be like, I'm going to find a new raid group. Sorry, guys. And that doesn't just put his brand at risk. That effectively stops what he's doing until he can find someone else to help him along with.
Yeah.
Unless he defends it, in which case...
Okay, yeah, fair.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough spot. Don't get me wrong. It's a tough spot to be in. But listen, if I found out that my content was built on the backs of people who were cheating, I would say something.
I would too.
That's just me.
It bothers me.
Yeah. And I think that that's fair. That's fair for you to wonder, Crimson. I don't disagree with you. Appreciate your call. If you want to call Limit Break Radio on Skype, 810-515-8715, limitbreakradio.com/Discord. It's definitely a serious issue. And I'm glad that, you know, we're able to talk about it. We feel free enough to be able to talk about it. I'm sure that this is going to ruffle more than a few feathers. I don't really care. I don't
feathers that need to be ruffled.
Yeah, I don't really give a shit, because I mean, I think that I have a point here, and you know what, you know, fucking bring it, Elysium. What are you gonna do? Find out that I called somebody a cunt in our Discord server?
That he can't do 2K DPS?
Oh no.
Okay, let's awkwardly go back to Mr. Happy's interview here.
Okay.
Question to both. Have you considered making the Primals band renditions available in-game through the Orchestrion? We haven't had any discussions about this, but we are willing to do it if the player demand is high.
Player demand is high. Fucking do
Hold
that
on.
shit.
He follows up. I'm glad he followed up with this one. Power to you, Mr. Happy. Would they have to be paid for through the MOG station, or could they be placed directly in the game?
Cheers.
I'm still not sure if there is any issue due to being available on iTunes or blah, 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 blah. Is that technically speaking, there are tracks, so we can just basically put them in when we want, and we'll have some discussions about this.
Like, why would they think we wouldn't want this? Like, come on now.
Yeah.
I can definitely see them going into the MOG station.
I can definitely see it. Yeah.
How much do we want them? Do we want them to fight a drop for it, or do we want them to enough to buy for $5?
Because what was it they just put on the Cash App? Wasn't those like orchestral versions of some songs?
Yeah, this bothers me because, you know, like looking back on when they first released all the Orchestrion songs, and they put the only way to get answers is by farming it a super rare drop through fucking Coil T13. And and the higher drop rate, you got a higher drop rate if you did it level sync.
Yep.
And I feel like that got people going back and doing old content. That got people helping people through it just to try to farm it. I mean, I feel like that did so much more for the community than sticking it for $5 on the MOG station. Like, fuck.
Yeah, but they get $5 if the MOG station.
You could add it as a rare drop back in like all the different versions of Garuda, and then you get the primal version of Garuda, and yet the original version drops like every single time.
I'm so sick of the fucking Cash App at this point. I just am.
Oh, I wonder if I should skip the next question then.
No, you shouldn't, because I'm actually very proud and happy that he asked this question.
All right, so he asks Yoshida, the MOG station has seemingly picked up the pace in which it has released new in-game items for players to purchase. How is it determined How is it determined what items will be placed in the MOG station and which will be placed in the game? Yoshida says, it may feel like the pace is being accelerated, but the MOG station releases are on a release schedule. which makes sense. We always joke that, oh, it's been so many weeks. There it is. Yep. More recently, we have been releasing items to the Chinese and Korean servers, which are separate from our global servers. Since those games use a different payment model than the global version, those regions pay us to create these items and supplement the game itself. When that happens, if the global players find out about these items and request them for our region as well, while they're intended for those markets, with player demand, we do make an effort to bring them to the global version as well. So it can make the pace seem accelerated for sure, but our MOG Station releases are simply on schedule.
It's the only thing that's on schedule, I think.
But that still didn't answer the question of how do you determine what shit will be placed directly in the game.
Well, here's the thing. If you take an item that was developed...
pay to win, Nika!
If you take an item that was developed for the Korean... Or not the Korean, the Chinese servers, and that's on their cash shop... They probably feel like, well, we have to put it on the cash shop because if we put it in the game, then
that wouldn't be fair. Yeah.
Even though I think basically what he's saying is the Chinese game is free to play and it's all through cash shop that they keep that afloat.
I think you buy like time with that, or actually, I couldn't tell you to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway,
I mean, the fact that this game has a different payment structure over in China is interesting.
It's because of the Chinese laws.
It says China and Korea, because every Korean MMO, every Korean MMO that comes out is free to play with microtransactions. Every single one. Okay. So, I think if they tried to release a subscription in Korea or China, it wouldn't work very well.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's because in China and Korea, most people don't have their own computers. They have to go to
the internet cafes.
Like internet cafe, thank you, to play their game.
Okay. All right.
But also I wonder things like random emotes that easily could have been put in the game are put in the cash shop. And I feel like his question was originally asking what determines that kind of thing, and they didn't answer that.
Well,
and I think that's fair.
Yeah, well, I think the answer was anything that goes into the and not anything, but a lot of the stuff that goes into the cash shop was originally designed for the cash shop for other countries.
Yeah.
Well, not shit like Play Dead though. That shit was straight cash shop.
I guess we don't really know that. We got
because we don't know where things were developed or if they were released somewhere else.
The only things we ever saw were the Chinese outfits and some of the mounts and stuff we saw that were released over there first.
Yeah.
But we don't know for sure. They said that they're paying us to create this shit. So if they said, hey, we want more emotes, here's more money, who knows?
Well, here's an interesting idea then. On the cash shop, it was something that was originally developed for the Korean or Chinese cash shop. Denote that somewhere. I'd kind of like to know.
Why would they do that?
They wouldn't. It serves them no purpose whatsoever. But then we could see, what could have gone into the game that you decided, I want people to pay for that instead.
I mean, I just assume that every time they post stuff about the cash shop, I'm like, oh, well, I guess they decided that that's worth more actual money than, the time that it would have taken for people to farm it.
Like Nika said with the scrolls, put yourself in Square Enix's position. I could take this one scroll and put it in this fight and have people doing it over and over and over again to get the scroll on all of their, characters. Or we can put it on the cash shop for $5, and they can pay $5 every time they want it for their characters.
Whatever.
And we can get paid.
Whatever. I fucking hate video games in 2018. This is fucking bullshit.
Final question, since they were running low on time. This was asked by one of the members of Elysium and the static I play with. Okay, well, there's your answer
the static
to that
he plays with is Balana?
Balana, yeah, okay. During the Garuda encounter, the Woken status can be achieved early on in the encounter or right at the very end. Since Titan and Ifrit must be woken at a specific time early on, was it intended that Garuda offer the players a choice on when to wake her? He says that was not intended that the players have a choice to waken Garuda early or late. The dev team fully intended for players to achieve the status early on. However, we have no intention of adjusting this for multiple reasons. First is that the fight has already been cleared, and so we would not want to invalidate the efforts of the team who have bested the encounter so far. Second is that we actually have respect for those who discovered this strategy. Much of the fight is designed to be very strict, but the players found a way to handle another mechanic in a different way without breaking the encounter and progress through the fight. It still gives Garuda this status, and even though it may be a bit easier than doing it early on, we like that the Garuda phase still works in its entirety regardless of which approach you take. Player creativity is always something we like to see. Besides with Titan and Ifrit, you won't get a choice, so good luck. This confused me because there have been several other examples through the years.
Cough Ninja, or I forget which one it is. It
was one of the Alexander boss fights, one of the weird virus sort of status effects. Someone found a way to manipulate it in a different way than was intended.
I think it was like EC or Siri or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. Nika, does this ring any bells?
It was A4 Savage against the Oppressor, I think it was called. And it was like your healers had to be like a certain distance away from each other.
Or they got debuffed.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Does that ring any bells, Nika?
Nisi, that's what it was called.
I don't know.
No, it doesn't. Our endgame correspondent is failing us. But yeah, anyway, both of
never
those
got that far, okay?
both of those instances, they just fixed it and patched it because that wasn't the way that it was supposed to be intended. So this is kind of weird mixed messages for me.
Oh yeah, but also remember back in Call of Bahamut Tier 2, they had this mechanic called Allegan Rat where you're supposed to pass it between players to like keep it alive because otherwise it blew up, and people just completely ignored the mechanic by triggering the enrage and beating
and
the
just
fight
healing through the enrage, yeah.
So
and they never patched that.
Yeah, it's on a case-by-case basis, really.
All right, that's kind of interesting. That wraps up Happy's audio interview, though. I mean, overall, I thought that was a pretty good interview, and thank you, Happy, for asking some of the questions that you did ask.
Good job, Uncle Happy.
Stop. The next interview is Dengeki, which was another E3 interview. Now, one of the things here that and this is something that Nate was talking about earlier, how you need to